Hey guys, we are here today to give you part 3 of our first self-storage facility. In this video, we're going to talk about how we selected a broker when we were ready to list the property for sale, how did we field different offers, and we also are going to talk about the administrative side of selling a property, some of the documentation that you have to get ready to prepare for the sale, and then also we're going to talk about that limbo period where you're waiting for the transaction to close, but at the same time, you're still needing to operate the facility at optimal level.
The first thing we did was select a broker. The partners actually got together and decided on a sale price that we wanted to sell the property for. We then reached out to a broker located in the North Carolina area, but they were also licensed in the state of Virginia. And then we also reached out to a national broker who actually reached out to us months prior to us deciding to list the facility. We gave the information that they requested of the facility, looking at income, looking at expenses, looking at occupancy. And then from there, they were able to base their projections on what they believe the future value of the property could be to a potential new buyer or investor. Once that number came back to us, and whoever number was close to the sale price, the partners got together and decided they wanted to sell the property for, that's who we decided to go with. And Marcus & Millichap was the brokerage company that won out. The next thing we wanted to do was to get to work. The broker was able to start their marketing efforts, and the partnership decided to actually go with more of a pocket listing and just listing it kind of more locally within their network. We also did some tag team marketing where I kind of put some fillers out there on Facebook to see if there was anyone in our Facebook networking groups who may be interested in the property. So we reached out to a local investor, and we actually reached out to some regional investors in the area that wanted to build out their portfolio in that region. And then Marcus & Millichap did more of their outside marketing where they reached out to self-storage investors in the industry that was looking to purchase and build out their self-storage portfolio. And we actually got offers from all three of those investors that I mentioned. We got an offer from a local investor, a regional investor, and also an outside investor who was more private equity. Outside investor came closest to the asking price that we were willing to sell the property for.
So once we accepted that highest offer, went back and forth a little bit on the purchase agreement, but once we had a signed purchase agreement, that triggered the due diligence period for the buyer. For us as sellers, that also triggered some work on our end too. During that due diligence period, we had to gather a lot of documentation that we had to turn over to the buyer so that he could verify that the property was performing at the level that we represented, and he would feel comfortable that it was a good deal. So during that process, we had to provide operational reports, so reports that showed physical occupancy of the property, economic occupancy, and management summary reports of the property. And all of those we could pull through our property management software. We also had to provide financial statements, so a trailing 12, which essentially means income statement, profit and loss statement, and a balance sheet for the past 12 months of operations. And then finally, we also had to provide past year's tax returns as well. So let professionals handle our taxes. We already had those available from our accountants to be able to turn that over to the buyer as well. Another thing that's not often talked about during the transaction and selling a property is that you are in a bit of a waiting limbo period when you're under contract. So one of the things that we made sure we did in that limbo period was, to the best of our knowledge, we kept our employees up to date as to when the timeline would be for the transition of ownership. And it was important for us, we felt, to communicate those things to our employees so she would not be fearful that, she wouldn't have a job or not sure what was going on, and that she would still be motivated to continue to work and not have to be fearful of those things. So we made sure we did communicate in a timely manner as best as we knew those updates and pass them on to our employee as well. Also, during that waiting period, there's still some administrative things to start to think about as the seller that can help the buyer with transitioning ownership. So some of the things that we started thinking about were if there were any vendor contracts that the buyer may want to assume, if there were any utilities that we had to contact to make sure that they knew when that transition date would take place so that the bills could be moved out of our name and into the new buyer's name. And so there's some smaller details like that that have to be worked out to help make that transition as smooth as possible from us as the sellers to the buyer.
Closing day. This day can be very hectic as you're dealing with the sellers, the title companies, the attorneys, the lenders, the brokers, making sure all documentation is sent in to the title company to ensure an efficient and successful closing. The last item that we review is the HUD-1 statement to make sure that it's correct and accurate. After that, then we go ahead and sign off on the deed. And since we're the sellers in this situation, conveying the property over to the new buyer, we're signing over the deed. And then after the deed is recorded, then funds were dispersed to us.
All right, so that concludes our 3-part series on our first self-storage facility. If you didn't catch those first 2 videos, definitely go back and check them out here. And please let us know if there are any other topics that you'd like us to cover on real estate investing, as we would love to do so. And thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it.
Until next time.